Hello, everyone, and welcome to Diamonds for Peace, the webinar, Recent Developments by the Kimberley Process. Thank you. The Kimberley Process, Civil Society Coalition, and Diamonds for Peace. I am Beth West, and I am a volunteer for Diamonds for Peace and today's moderator. This webinar will last around an hour and a half. The Kimberley Process, Civil Society Coalition, and Diamonds for Peace will each present for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have a question and answer session. Before we begin, a little housekeeping. Your video and microphone are not available during the webinar. If you do encounter any issues during the webinar, please send a message to all the panelists using the chat box, and we will try and resolve it as quickly as possible. If you have a question about the presentation, please do enter that question into the question and answer box. And if you agree with a question that has already been typed in, then please like it, and we will prioritize those liked questions at the end of the webinar. Please refrain from recording the webinar. We will be recording the webinar anyway, and we'll email a URL to all participants. So don't worry if you have any technical issues, you will be able to view it at a later stage. When you exit this room, you'll see a questionnaire. Please do answer the questions so that we can work towards improving for future sessions. So now to begin, and as a way of introduction to today's seminar, I wanted to tell you briefly why I became involved in Diamonds for Peace. I am a gemologist and an educator, working as a tutor for the Gemological Association of Great Britain, as well as taking on other projects inspired by my love of diamond. Because bottom line, diamond is an incredible material. Beyond its intrinsic properties, its strength, its beauty, it connects us to something far greater than ourselves. It takes us on a journey back to when the earth was first forming. It allows us tangible contact with something extraordinary, something that endures, and that is why we hold it in such high esteem and why we associate it with such powerful emotions like love. So in defense of the gem, I will go so far as to say there is no such thing as an unethical diamond. The diamond has done nothing wrong. It is the unethical players and the unethical practice that litter some areas of this industry, brought about by the monetary value that we have naturally placed upon the stone over the millennia. What has invariably followed is the corruption, manipulation, and violence that tags along with greed, and the desperate measures that are sadly coupled with poverty and need. But that is why we are all here today, because we want that to change. I became involved with Diamonds for Peace when I realized that I cannot love a gemstone, I cannot inspire a student if I recognize that the sourcing and supply of the gem can, not does, but can sometimes cause harm and damage. And whilst there are problems across the large-scale mining and the artisanal and small-scale mining sectors, it is the ASM communities that are the more vulnerable, with a lot of the LSM issues seemingly associated with artisanal or subsistence mining. And this shouldn't be the case. Diamonds should bring benefit to these communities. It should offer them wealth and security. It was ultimately nature's gift to them. I became involved because although I know there is no one simple solution, the solution is for everyone to do something. And there is so much being done, and it is beyond what we are going to hear today. And that is so exciting to see. So for my part, this is my little something. And I am honored to be introducing our panelists today who have taken that something an awful lot further. So please, may I firstly introduce you all to Chaya Murakami, the founder of Diamonds for Peace. the organizer of this webinar. And as a brief introduction, Chea founded Diamonds for Peace in 2015 in response to her own research into the darker side of the diamond industry after getting engaged. With a background in international development, she was well placed to help. Focusing on artisanal mining in Liberia, having witnessed firsthand the realities confronted daily by the people in these communities, Chea built up the organization with the intent of supporting these communities through various initiatives. So she will now give you an overview of the work of the organization. I welcome you, Chea. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Just a moment. Hello, everyone. I'm Chea Murakami from Diamonds of Peace. So welcome to the webinar today. I hope all of you are doing well, although we are still in the midst of COVID. As an organizer of this webinar, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Diamonds for Peace. We are an NGO established in Japan in 2015 and then in Liberia in 2016. Our vision is to have the world in which all the diamonds are mined, cut, and processed with humanitarian and environmental considerations. Our missions are to improve the working conditions and social status of the workers in the diamond supply chain, and to promote ethics and fairness in the diamond industry. And we are working in Liberia and also in Japan. And we have 3 pillars for our activities. One is self-reliant support for miners, diggers, and the people in artisanal diamond mining communities. And another is the emergency assistance in the case of pandemic or a disaster. The last one, but not the least, is the awareness raising, especially targeting the consumers, because we believe that the consumers have the biggest voice and power to change the industry. So I will talk more about this in my presentation. So thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the presentations.
Thank you, Chair. Now to our first presentation, Diamonds, the Kimberley Process and Human Rights, Recent Developments, to be presented by Hans Merket and Shimiso Matisi from the Kimberley Process Civil Society Coalition, a civil society that acts as the watchdog for the Kimberley Process at its very minimum, but who is now holding the faults of the process to account and taking it several steps further, pushing for responsible diamond governance. Hans joined the International Peace Information Service, or IPIS, as a researcher in 2016. IPIS, based in Antwerp, now supports the coalition as a research institute, offering its analyses and expertise on issues on natural resources, conflict mapping, and business and human rights, and is the only non-African member of the Kimberley Process Civil Society Coalition. Hans coordinates IPIS's work within the civil society and IPIS's broader research program on responsible/irresponsible diamond mining and trade. Shimiso is the global coordinator of the Kimberley Process Civil Society Coalition and the deputy director of Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association, or ZILA, responsible for program design, fundraising, and functions as head of operations at ZILA. With over 18 years of experience in the extractive sector, he has extensive research and advocacy experiences on responsible sourcing, human rights, diamond mining, extractive industries, water resources management, intellectual property rights, and farmers' rights. He has also published several research papers on the role of Parliament in playing an oversight role in the mining sector, including training for parliamentarians in Zimbabwe and Malawi. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Hans and Shimiso. Shimiso, over to you. Shimiso?
Thank you very much, Beth. Hello, everyone. Firstly, let me thank Diamonds for Peace for organizing this very, very important meeting today. This is an opportunity for us to share some of the insights and issues that we have noted over the past few months since the last webinar that was organized by Diamonds for Peace. So we have a PowerPoint presentation broken into two. The first, I will talk about responsible sourcing, the Kimberley process, the situation in Zimbabwe, and my colleague Hans will talk about overall what's happening on the African continent in terms of things that we have observed as key and things that we have observed as some of the aspects that we should be sharing with you. So I'm going to share with you my PowerPoint presentation. I hope it's clear from where you are seated. If Beth, you can confirm for me that it's clear. You can see my screen, hopefully. Thank you very much. So what we are going to talk about are diamonds, the Kimberley process, and human rights, in particular recent developments. I think this slide that I've shown shows you some of the latest issues, articles, and aspects that we have been involved in over the past few months. We've conducted quite a number of webinars on conflict diamonds. We've also done quite a lot of research in recent months related to the impacts of diamond mining on local communities in Lesotho, in Zimbabwe, Sierra Leone, and other countries. And I'm sure from that slide, you can see that we have quite a number of publications that we have also produced. We've also done an analysis of the impacts of COVID-19 on the African continent, in particular mining communities, and we have organized quite a number of conferences related to promoting the rights of local communities. So this also includes continuous monitoring and reporting on the situation in diamond mining affected communities across the African continent. So this is the kind of work that we do as the KP Civil Society Coalition, with membership in different countries: Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Sierra Leone, DRC, Cameroon, Belgium, Cote d'Ivoire, and also Liberia, including recently we have a member in Central African Republic, which is still an outpost in terms of conflict diamonds as they are defined in the Kimberley process. So in terms of some of the issues that are quite key within the Kimberley process, or how the Kimberley process has failed in a sense, the issue of conflict diamond definition, it still remains a sore thumb for the Kimberley process. And this is an issue that we have been pushing for, but during the last intersessional meeting, there wasn't any agreement at all, just like in previous years as well, when the issue of expanding the definition of conflict diamonds from solely focusing on rebel movements to include issues to do with violence and human rights violations in the diamond mining sector. So this still remains a challenge within the Kimberley process. So it's one of the key things that are quite important for us to keep pushing for in terms of our work. And with quite a number of participants in the Kimberley process not acknowledging that the nature of violence or the nature of conflicts have actually evolved over the years to include labor rights, to include environmental rights, to include violence perpetrated by states and other non-state actors. So that also affects the local communities. And this is something that should be acknowledged. And now, within the Kimberley process as well, there are efforts to develop voluntary responsible sourcing principles. And these efforts are still going on, and there's a draft on the table. But it is not without quite a lot of questions as well within the Kimberley process. And there is actually potential for the voluntary principles, which are supposed to be promoting responsible sourcing standards may be blocked, maybe by some of the Kimberley process participants. And it's possible that once adopted, who knows, there might be actual or no impact at all because of lack of implementation by some participants who may view this as an imposition of additional functions on the Kimberley process. So I think it's something that definitely will continue raising questions on, and also make sure that at least the participants see the light or the need to develop concrete voluntary responsible sourcing principles that can maybe at a national level be enforceable. It's possible that they can be enforceable if they are translated into national legislation. But what we have also observed over the past few months is the civic space inside and outside the Kimberley process, which is still under threat. We had quite a tense closing session during the June KP intersectional meeting, which was online, with some participants, for example, trying to stop the civil society closing remarks because we had pointed out some of the weaknesses and some of the challenges that those countries should be addressing in terms of making sure that there are reforms within the Kimberley process to address situations of violence and situations related to human rights abuses and violations. And the other element, definitely, that we are looking forward to here in terms of responsible sourcing relates to how, for example, the different participants within the Kimberley process would respond to issues to do with environmental damage. For example, in Angola, we want to hear how Angola will react to that, how DRC will react to that, given the environmental damage that is going on in there. And these are the kind of things that over the years we have been raising, that diamond mining companies should take measures to curb any environmental damage, anything that can endanger the lives of communities and also the lives of workers at any mine site. And we have an upcoming review mission to Mozambique, which definitely might help Zimbabwe as well in terms of its compliance with the Kimberley process, and in particular cabbing, smuggling that goes on in between those countries. The other element I would talk about is related to Zimbabwe in terms of diamonds and human rights in Zimbabwe. We have seen quite marked and significant improvement in the human rights situation in Marange, as confirmed by a number of community monitors that we work with in Marange. So they reported that human rights violations have significantly gone down, but here and there you have isolated cases which are being reported. So this means that at least the state actors, the private security in Marange and other areas around Marange are taking measures to address challenges. We were actually there last week within the framework of what is called a Kimberley process self-assessment process in Marange, instituted by Parliament of Zimbabwe to ensure that Zimbabwe carries out a self-assessment process in terms of compliance with Kimberley process. And I think that's quite commendable in terms of trying to look at how the country can enhance and improve its systems. So we, from those interactions with local communities, we also visited the Zimbabwe Diamond Consolidated Company. We visited Anjin, and we are going to visit Murowa Diamonds as part of that process. And this process actually gives us information on how the diamond mining sector in Zimbabwe can be improved in compliance with the Kimberley process minimum requirements. requirements. So it's quite commendable that Zimbabwe is doing that. And the other element I would like to add is from our visits, I think the issue of community demands for economic and social benefits from mining remains. And I think the issue of artisanal mining is quite important. The idea is how can communities benefit from those resources? So that's quite important. So in contrary to previous years where it was always about human rights violations in Marange, the violence that would go on in there, the situation has significantly improved, and it's commendable that at least there is progress in that front. Then when it comes to responsible sourcing measures, what we have also tried to do, since I work with the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association as well, we've developed a manual on responsible mining and sourcing practices for diamond mining companies in Zimbabwe. And this is a manual that is available for use by any company in Zimbabwe. We've shared it with the Zimbabwe Consolidated Diamond Company, ZCDC, which is mining in Marange. And this is actually spells out some of the key steps those companies can take when it comes to respecting human rights, when it comes to the environment, labor rights, and also revenue management or corporate social responsibility practices. So that's quite important, a resource which has been given to ZCDC. Then also ZCDC, I can report that they have actually been in touch with the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance so that they can join that assurance system, which would enable them to do a self-assessment of their practices, their impacts on human rights, corporate social responsibility, on the environment, revenue management, transparency and accountability issues. And I think this is quite important. Once a company goes through this initiative, it means it has also the opportunity to take measures to address any problems. So I think the fact that ZCDC will be undergoing that process actually is an important step. This follows here in Zimbabwe efforts by Unki Mine, which is in the platinum mining sector, which has taken steps, which in fact was the first company, one of the first companies in the world to undergo an audit by the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. So that's another very, very important aspect. Another issue that we raised during plenary relates to Muroa, which is a member of the Natural Diamond Council and the Responsible Jewelry Council. And I think they definitely we encourage Muroa to implement these standards, which the NDC and also Responsible Jewelry Council are promoting. So it's quite important that we look at systems that can be implemented by that company. So I've talked already about community participation in artisanal and small-scale mining in Zimbabwe, but what we need to make sure happens is formulation of the appropriate policies and procedures to enhance participation of local communities in artisanal diamond mining. So without wasting a lot of time, I will ask my colleague, Hans, to talk about selected updates from communities impacted by diamond mining across the African continent. Over to you, Hans. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Shamiso. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Chi. Thanks, Diamonds for Peace. Thanks all of you for listening in. I will see if I can, share my screen. Just a minute. Sorry, it doesn't seem to be working. Let me try again. I have to give I think we're there now. All right. Is that working? Yeah. Then I'll go. All right. So sorry for the delay. So I wanted to talk about a few updates. There's not a lot of time, so we've selected a few that we thought would be interesting to talk about when it comes to diamonds, human rights in the Kimberley process. So we won't lose a lot of time with presenting IPIS. I think that has already been done. We are a research institute. We're based in Belgium. We focus on a few different areas, with a geographic focus on sub-Saharan Africa. And our specialization, let's say, is in collecting data in remote and complex environments and bringing such data by relying on local structures, strengthening local structures, and bringing that data to international fora, bringing that grassroots perspective there. And that is also, that links to the topic of today, because a lot of what we do revolves around community-based monitoring. And we think that is important because in our view, it's a perspective, the community voice and community perspective is often underrepresented in debates on responsible sourcing. There's a lot of mention of why communities and how they benefit from, for instance, diamond mining, but this mainly relies on metadata. Let's say how much diamond mining contributes to GDP, how much people the sector employs, how much livelihoods that depend on diamond mining, but not a lot of reference to lived realities of these communities. And we wonder often who is actually asking these communities themselves how they see this impact from diamond mining, be it large-scale operations in their backyards, but also artisanal diamond mining, how they perceive the benefits they receive from that. So we work in a few countries, of course, with the limited resource we have, and I'll share some examples from that. I also want to highlight here that this is not a representative image of the sector. Of course, we luckily, severe human rights abuses in this sector, as Beth has also highlighted in the beginning, are rare, and in most cases harms are very limited. But we feel that it is still important to highlight these cases where things go really wrong here, because these are often the cases that receive little attention elsewhere. So a first case that I want to talk about is that of abuses by a private security company protecting industrial diamond mining in Tanzania that you may have heard of. And I want to also explain a bit how we worked on that and how that links to why we think it is important to do more, to listen more to communities, to what they have to say. So we started working on this issue in 2017. When we were doing surveys on the broader social, economic, and human rights impact of mining in Tanzania around Lake Victoria zone, both artisanal mining and industrial mining. And that brought us, amongst others, to Mwadui, which is the area where you have Williamson diamond mine. And there we went around all the villages around that mine to ask them about how they perceive the impact from that mine, positive impacts, negative impacts. And first of all, we were surprised to learn that we were the first to ever ask them these questions. That was not only in this case of Williamson diamond mine, but also communities around large-scale gold mines, for instance, where communities hadn't been asked a lot of questions or weren't listened to much before. And that is here particularly surprising. The Williamson diamond mine is a very old mine. Petra Diamonds, the current owner, has also been there for years, but it didn't have appropriate structures to engage with these communities. I'm going to try, I'm not sure whether it will work. You probably still see the presentation, or do you see the link that I'm sharing? Beth, can you clarify?
You can see, I can only see the presentation at the moment.
Okay.
There's a further reading link at the bottom.
Yeah, I know, but then I'll share. Maybe this works better. Do you now see the map that I'm sharing?
Yeah, I can see the map.
Yeah. Okay, all right, sorry. I've made it a bit difficult. What I wanted to show, so this is one of the outputs of the work that we've done with a lot of artisanal mines that we mapped. This is often how we work. We try to make things visual on a map. And this is, I wanted to zoom in a bit on the Mwadui area, and I'll select the satellite layer, if that works. Yeah, because that gives a bit of a better idea of how the operation looks like. So you see here a quite big mine in a rural area, which is the Williamson Diamond Mine, with just a few small villages around that. And so we went to visit these villages, and let me show, for instance, here, what we did is to, we went there, that was already 2018, to check how many, to understand how many people live there, what their livelihoods are. Here they live from farming, livestock keeping, artisanal mining, but also to understand the socioeconomic context. And this is, for instance, a small village that doesn't have any primary school, secondary school, nor a health center. They're all at a certain distance from that village. They have mainly mud buildings. They have no connection to the electricity grid. There's no piped water supplies, only wells and boreholes. And that shows you, of course, the poverty context here. And in such a context, it's normal that there are difficulties. It's not easy when there's what is perceived as a rich mining company operating close to poor communities. We expected certain grievances, like communities not being happy about insufficient employment opportunities or benefits flowing back to the community. But what we didn't expect was the scale of the grievances by these community members that had not been documented before. We received numerous reports of communities being tortured, being shot, being injured by the private security patrolling the license area of the mine, this large area. And that were both community members that trespassed on that license area knowingly in search for diamonds, but as this is an unfenced area, also often unknowingly while they were fetching firewood or water or herding their livestock. And we saw that in all, we visited all these different villages around it, and we heard always the same reports. We communicated that to the mine when we were doing the research in 2018, but we got no reply. We communicated that when we published the report in 2019, we got no reply, also not from other companies in the diamond sector. So given that this case had no relevance for the Kimberley process, for instance, these diamonds continue to be certified conflict-free, and they were sold in trading hubs like Antwerp or elsewhere. It was only when then this case was picked up by a UK NGO called RAID, and then later by a law firm, Lide, that brought Petra Diamonds on behalf of 70 villages before a high court in London, that things started evolving, that eventually the Petra Diamonds agreed to a $6 million settlement, which compensated the families of the victims and also invested in community projects. But of course, it is not where it stops, given that this is a very positive step forward, but community monitoring is still needed in this case in order to see to what extent the package is implemented and whether no further harms are being done. A second case I wanted to talk about, and I hope you see my screen now, if everything is correct, then is about toxic pollution around of rivers in Angola and DRC that is linked to a diamond mine in Angola. And this is actually a very recent case. The details are still unfolding and many aspects are still unknown. It started at the end of July, just 2 months ago, when all of a sudden communities in DRC and Angola reported that the rivers were all of a sudden turning red, that fish were dying, even big animals that lived in the river like crocodiles and hippos were dying. And suspicions started to rise quite soon and looked at the Katoka mine, which is a big, actually one of the largest industrial diamond mines in the world, in Angola, but just across the border with DRC. And indeed, I think on the 9th of August, the Katoka mine confirmed that there had been a spill in its tailing water that led to where you see the satellite imagery that led to the coloring of the water. But they also denied that they were using any chemicals that could clarify the effects on the health or on the environment. Well, then, and I think the next step, there was a visit, a monitoring visit by the DRC government to the area, and they reported then that I think over 4,000 people at minimum had gotten sick, 12 people had died. There was a research report by an institute from the University of Kinshasa that warrants that this, what they call the catastrophe, could affect millions and could last for years. But all these, given that we are now 2 months later and that there are quite some alarming signals, this is all, this is not hard evidence here. It's mainly because there are so many unknowns still, but there has been, besides that one reaction by the mine, there has been no further reactions by the mine nor its owners, and its owners are the Russian-controlled Alrosa, which is one of the largest mining company in the world, and the Angola-owned Endiama. So we are still in the dark about what precisely caused this pollution, and what also, because if we can identify the substances involved, we can also better assess the risks and so on. And that is another example that we wanted to give about how important it is to take communities serious, because as long as we don't go to this area, very remote area, to better assess what is going on here, also the longer the damages will continue, and the longer it will take before potential extra harms are being mitigated. I'm not sure where we are with time. I have a third example. That will take me 5 more minutes. Do you think there's time for that, or should I pass the floor?
I think carry on for 5 more minutes.
Okay. Number 3, I wanted to talk about conflict diamonds from the Central African Republic. That is the case that is most known. It's the only country where the Kimberley process identifies conflict diamonds according to its very narrow definition, because here rebels are financing their fight against the government by involvement in diamond mining and trading. But it's another painful example of where the community perspective is entirely absent in our view. So the country has been under an embargo by the KP, meaning that no rough diamonds can be exported since 2013. That embargo was partially lifted in 2015 when exports were again allowed from a number of compliance zones in the west of the country that were seen as being subscribing to KP criteria. And I'll again try to show a map here that we have worked on. Let me only highlight the diamonds to also, because, and civil society is often critical of that, because we think that embargoes are a very blunt tool that doesn't leave a lot of room for nuance, and that often, of course, disregards the many livelihoods that depend on diamonds. So here you see in green, you see the areas that the KP considers compliant. So diamonds that are produced in these areas can export diamonds, but that leads, of course, to a very arbitrary situation on the ground. If you, for instance, zoom in and you see here 2 mines that are just a few kilometers apart and that have quite similar conditions, and then you can also always later explore these mines. We collect some data on the conditions with regard to armed presence and women and children working there. That this mine, which is just on the border of a compliance zone that can produce diamonds and export them, and this mine is so-called producing conflict diamonds, which is, of course, for communities involved, that often difficult to understand. Now, this embargo by the KP allows the KP and others to claim that they are dealing with conflict diamonds, while in practice, actually, reports by the UN and others have shown that 90 to 95% of diamonds are still smuggled out of the country and eventually also end up on the world market. That means that the impact on world trade is limited, but of course the impact for these communities is quite immense, because they not only face lower prices for the diamonds they produce and thus have less income, they're also driven into the hands of criminals, armed groups, etc., that actually thrive in this now illegal market. And this has even, and this may be a last point I wanted to make, this has also been worsened due to COVID, because there we have seen that diamond prices have drastically reduced, up to 50% less than they got for the diamonds they find. And that has taken on much longer, much after the world markets have again recovered. And you see what that means actually is in practice that many people start turning and trying to find their luck in other, trying to find opportunities elsewhere, which is of course not easy in a war-torn country. And here we have done a number of surveys at different intervals to assess that. And you indeed, this is just one example, but from this mine you see that before COVID, and there were 350 people working there, for instance, that grew to 400, and then it got ever less as circumstances got more difficult and as there was less to gain due to COVID. So these were just a few examples that I wanted to highlight, and where we work. I think there's of course a lot more that remains to be done. I think in the countries across the world, this is a perspective that should be analyzed more. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have later, but I will now pass the floor to Chie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hans and Shamiso, for highlighting both the positive progress being made in Marange, but also the areas that still need urgently addressing. But finally, let's move over to Chair Murakami for the last presentation on the recent developments in the work undertaken by Diamonds for Peace following her visit to Liberia last spring. Thank you so much, Chair. I look forward to hearing the presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Chie. I'm going to talk about our recent development in Liberia. Oops. Okay. So as I explained before, one of our biggest pillar is a self-reliant support for the miners and diggers and the mining community. And before I go into the details about this, I just want to explain a little bit about the terms I use, because I say miners and diggers, and they are two different groups of people I'm referring to. So when I say a miner, that means a person who has or who is supposed to have a mining license. And when I say a digger, that means a person who actually digs a gravel to look for diamonds. So these are the actual terms used in Liberia. So that's why I use the same. So we are working with a cooperative in a community named Wiza in Liberia, and their structure is like this. They have individual members, so that are miners and farmers. They also have farmers because this is a multi-purpose cooperative, and they also have group members. Actually, they are not the official group members yet, but we are proposing this idea, and the cooperative is embracing the idea. They are just waiting for the groups to sign up and pay the fee, which is actually an issue. But those group members are Diggers Association and Women's Group. And the reason we are proposing these group members to become the member is that the diggers are more vulnerable than miners, and they have actually more issues we need to address. So that's why, although the Liberian government policy is to organize all the miners into the cooperatives that exclude the diggers, actually the government not so much care about the diggers, but we believe it's very important to include them so that they don't get left behind. So our current focus under this strengthening the diamond mining cooperative, we have several activities. For example, we have activities to strengthen the foundation of the organization, skills development for record keeping, and skills development to plan, run, and manage the projects and education. So regarding the strengthening the foundation of the organization, the cooperative, and we were working to for the cooperative to get the full-fledged status by the Liberian government. Well, our journey in Liberia started in 2015. However, our first project was the emergency assistance to alleviate the negative impacts brought by Ebola outbreak, and that lasted for 2 years. So after Ebola is over, we conducted the survey and situation analysis in 2017 and 18, and then shortlisted the potential partner communities. And after visiting the several visits to each candidate community, we decided to work with WISA because we saw their commitment in their actions. So we encouraged the people in WISA to organize themselves into a cooperative, and they embraced our idea and started to work on it. Fortunately, WISA was chosen with several other mining communities to receive a pre-cooperative training, which is a prerequisite training by the Cooperative Development Agency, that's a government agency, and they have to receive that kind of training in order to form a cooperative. So they participated in this training in 2019 and received a pre-cooperative status. Then the cooperative members needed to work on to satisfy the conditions to get the full-fledged status. And those conditions are to establish the office, to open a bank account under the cooperative's name, to develop a business plan, to hire a management team, and to erect 3 signboards. And these kind of things may sound easy things for you, but actually it's not that easy on the ground, given that they were not accustomed to work with other people, and they've never done such kind of things. And it also requires some money, but they are very poor. So Diamonds for Peace had kept encouraging them and supported them by giving them technical assistance so that they can satisfy the conditions by themselves. Because our policy is not to give them cash, so we couldn't do that. We could only give them encouragement and technical assistance. And so it took them a while, but they finally satisfied the conditions and presented those progress to CDA, then received the full-fledged status on 4th August, which is last month. And WISA is the first cooperative which received the full-fledged status, among others who received the pre-cooperative training in 2019. So they are also featured in a newspaper article in Liberia. So regarding the Diggers Association, we have been working with them as well. And we actually, the Diggers formed the association around the same time the cooperative was formed in 2019. However, their leaders, they appointed the leaders, but they didn't work so much, and it was kind of dormant for a while. And we kept raising the issue about the association, and they finally decided to hold the first democratic election. So they established an election committee, and the candidates registered themselves, and they paid the fee, and they did debate sessions, and the members for Diggers Association voted. In front of the observers. And then the election committee counted the votes, and they officially announced the new leadership in June. So it's been 3 months, finally. So the new leadership is working, and we are hoping they will make some progress. And one of the biggest challenges that the cooperative and the other groups like Diggers Association have is record keeping. Although they understand the importance of keep records, like meeting minutes or member registration, a cash book, or share purchase record, and all other records, they know the importance, but they don't want to update their records regularly. So usually the leaders of the cooperative and the members blame the secretary who don't update the records, but we always tell them it's not the secretary's sole responsibility to keep the records, but it's the entire cooperative's responsibility to keep the records. And they also understand the consequences if they don't do that. However, it's difficult for them to practice. So whenever our local team goes to WISA, we check their records and we give them advice, and we also work with them to update the records. But actually, it's quite it's taking time, and yeah, it's quite a challenge. And we are also thinking to develop a training on this, because giving regular coaching doesn't look like a training for them. So we want them to be more serious. So we're gonna develop that training for this. But if you have any good idea to improve on this issue, I welcome your suggestions. So another thing we are working on is skills development to plan, run, and manage projects. And some of their projects are income generation activities. And we have several activities ongoing in WISA, and the cooperative is working on fish pond development. Diggers are working on soap making cells. Women are working on the cells of oil and rice, and the community is working on a public laboratory. And the purpose for their income generation is to run their own mining projects with their own funds, because I think many of you know already, but they have issues with people called supporters. So supporters are the local investors who fund a part or the whole mining project, but in return they buy the mined diamonds at their favorable price. So the miners, the diggers always complain that they're exploited by the supporters, and it is their biggest wish to have their own mining project with their own funds. So in order to do that, they need to make money and save money, and they also need to learn how to plan and run the project. So we got the small funding from a Japanese foundation for this project. So each group have made the business plans and the project plans, and they just finished the procurement for the materials. So the cooperative will construct the fish pond, and the diggers is going to develop and produce the soaps, and the women is going to sell the oil and rice, and the community will build the public laboratory, because the WISA doesn't have any public laboratory, and the people are practicing the open defecation. It's another big issue for this community, and they want to improve that. So actually they decided what they want to do in their own projects, and this is what they decided. So that's why we are supporting their projects. And another income generation activity we have been working on is beekeeping. And we started this last year, and they had the first training in September last year. And they are having a practical training every month. So this project will be run until March next year. So in the beginning, we had 20 official participants and 50 observers, because the trainers organization is very generous. So they accepted any number of observers. So initially there was 70 participants, but now the number has been decreased, and there's about 35 participants, but those remaining are very committed. But okay, I think any kind of project has its own issues, and Okay, it takes time actually, especially in the beginning of the beekeeping, and they need to take care of the hives. It doesn't take that much time. They just need 15 minutes or 20 minutes per week to take care of the beehives, but they need to do that every week, and they need to be patient to wait for the bees to get colonized in their hives. And once they are colonized, they also need to take care of the hives regularly. So it's sometimes very difficult for them to practice this kind of thing. But we are hoping, they haven't got the first harvest yet, but they're going to have a small harvest sometime in several months. So when they see the actual result, the money from the sales of the honey, that will attract other people as well. So we are going to have a refresher training this coming October to invite new participants, and also those who want to return to the training, they have the second chance. And we are also going to send some of the best participants to intermediate training in November, and they're also going to have a training on harvest. So we believe this beekeeping will produce enough profits. And another good side effect is that they need to think about the environment, and they need to think about protecting their trees if they want to produce more honey, because the more flowering trees are, the more honey they can produce. So that's another reason we introduced beekeeping in Wisa, because Wisa is surrounded by forests, but they're cutting down the trees for mining activities, and they just leave all the mines after exhausting the mineral. Okay, the other component for the self-reliant support is education, and we developed several trainings. And we also did a study tour in June. Okay, so lately we developed a basic environmental education for the miners, diggers, and community members, because they don't know anything. They didn't know anything about the environment, what it means, or what their forests have for them, and why they need to protect the environment or the forest. They didn't know anything. So this was a very, very basic training, the education, and they learned what environment is. And we also did a water quality test. So the participants took waters from various sources, and we did a water quality test. And so they could see the results in different colors, which means the water, if their water is contaminated or not so much contaminated. And now they have kind of the basic understanding about it, so we can introduce more knowledge and ideas to improve and reclaim the abandoned mines. And we organized a study tour to visit one of the best cooperatives in Liberia. We visited the cocoa farmers cooperative in Nimba County. Since the mining cooperative is a very new thing, the government just started that. So actually they don't have any successful case yet. But we thought the cooperative members can learn something from existing agricultural cooperatives. So we visited them, and they explained everything to their cooperative members. And they showed us their warehouse, and they even showed us their accounting books. So we were very surprised with their openness, because in Liberia, people tend to be very secretive, and they don't know, they don't want to tell you anything about their secrets or their tips. So we were very surprised, but it was very good experience. And the people with the cooperative will also share their knowledge or their experiences later with those who want to learn from them. Okay, so I'll just quickly explain about the emergency assistance initiative we have done. So because we're in the COVID pandemic, we had a project maintaining resilience in artisanal diamond mining communities in Liberia. We did this from January to May this year. This was funded by the World Bank. And we developed a training on health and soap making. And we did that in 17 mining communities in the western region of Liberia. So that was the major component for the project. And we also developed the tools for due diligence to be used by a diamond mining cooperative. And we used craft. Yeah, so we developed a number of questions and we tested that tool with the cooperative and we improved on it. So they are supposed to use, actually they didn't know anything about due diligence. So we introduced the idea of due diligence and why that's important. So now they have kind of understanding about due diligence and the importance to do that. And we also did a survey targeting the licensed diamond exporters about their situations and their challenges. And there's only 5 licensed diamond exporters in Liberia, and we could interview 2 out of 5. Not everybody, because some exporters didn't want to meet us. And we had an interesting experience during this survey because we asked for help to the Dealers Association, but we found the head of the association is unlicensed dealer. So it was quite difficult to get his help because, you know, and these photo shows from the scene from one of the communities which received the health and soap making workshops. So after the workshop, this community prepared a faucet bucket for their hand washing, and some women started making soaps by themselves, and they do that for their income generation. So these women, they told us they're single mothers and they have like 8 children, but they couldn't move around because of COVID. So this is how they live now. So yeah, we are happy we did that, and these women can help themselves. And the other emergency assistance initiative we did is we provided some assistance to internally displaced people by a volcano eruption in Democratic Republic of Congo in June, in collaboration with the local NGO, the Congo Basin Conservation Society Network. I believe that the representative from this NGO, Joshua, is attending this webinar. So you can talk to him if you like. So although our funds are very limited, Diamonds for Peace and also KPCSC network also put their own money. And we gave food to 20 displaced people or host families who are hosting those displaced people. We provided food and some cash. Yeah, we did that in Bukavu because the people from Goma, it's around the volcano, walked like 100 kilometers on foot to Bukavu, and many of them were staying outside, so local people hosted them to their homes, things like that. So I hope the situation is a little better now. And we decided to do this activity because DRC has many miners and diggers and mining communities. So we wanted to do something, although our support is very small. So lastly, but not the least, another pillar is awareness raising. So I'm not going to talk about so much right now because actually these are ongoing. I don't have so much to talk about today, but we can update about these activities in the next webinar, maybe later this year or early next year. So I think, as many of you know, the KPCSC has a campaign movie, and we have a translation project so that the Japanese audience can understand the movie. So I think we can complete this project maybe next month. And we are also conducting a survey on the awareness about the issues surrounding diamonds, targeting consumers and retailers in Japan. And we did this in 2017, and this is our second survey, so that we can compare the results, and we can also improve how we can raise their awareness. So that's what we are doing right now. And we just published our newsletter. And you can find more stories about the initiative I've talked today. So you can download it from this URL. So thank you very much. These are the staff from Librarian Office. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. Now moving on to the question and answer session of this webinar. I can see already that there are a couple, that there are quite a few questions. There is also, Cristina Villegas has also posed a question to all the attendees regarding the expansion of the World Diamond Council's System of Warranties program to cover the broader set of commitments. So if anyone amongst the attendees wishes to address her question, please raise your hand and I will unmute you, hopefully after we've got to the questions pertaining to what we've just heard. Firstly, again, a question from for Hans from Cristina Villegas. I understand that there was a settlement with between Petra and Leyday about the Williamson mine. Can you comment, Hans, on that agreement, and is the company meaningfully changing? What would you like to see as a part of their reform?
Yeah, I can definitely say a few things about that. I think on the whole, this settlement, how it looks on paper, because implementation is still to start, is quite positive. It's been there has been a change in management from the mine that apparently also led to a change of approach, because we were in the first place really surprised by the fact that we didn't get any replies, that a big company like Petra Diamonds did not seem to take this serious, but that has completely changed, and the company now really takes it serious. They have done their own assessments of the harms that have been done. They have recognized a lot of these harms, and I think the settlement package is quite progressive in the sense that it's not only about compensation of victims, but it's also about, well, they will set up a better grievance mechanism. They will invest in community projects. They will support alternative livelihoods for these communities, etc. So on the whole, on paper, it actually looks quite good now, and that is of course then also the challenging part, is also to start implementing it, and we hope to be able to keep an eye on that. But I think this has been a quite good outcome of a very painful process. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hans. Another one directly for you, and this is from Ruby Stockton Weinberg. Thank you, Ruby. Can you share any of the findings from the mining communities you consulted in Sierra Leone?
Yeah, so indeed with the KP Civil Society Coalition, we did in all the different countries where we have NGO membership, we consulted with mining affected communities. That process is still, or the processing of that data is still ongoing. We hope to be able to publish results in about a month from now, I think, where we will have reports per country, but also more cross-country analysis that we'll put out. Some, so it would be, I'm taking, because I was not involved in the research, I can share a few elements from it, but it was our partner NMJD in Sierra Leone who conducted that. I think what was, because I was recently at a presentation where Abu Brima from NMJD presented some elements, so I can highlight those. I think a lot of the findings were elements that are common to ASM or the challenges with ASM in other countries, such as the difficult security circumstances, very little protective equipment being used, the poor health circumstances, not a lot of hygiene tending to be quite bad. Gender discrimination, women not getting the same pay as men and doing hard work. So these issues that you often see. I think then what was particular for Sierra Leone was a lot of complaints from community about the legal framework not being very conducive to artisanal mining because of the fact that they already face very difficult circumstances, but then they are only allowed to use rudimentary tools. They can't go deeper than a certain, I think it's about 10 meters, etc. They don't have good options or fair options to market their production, so they are often cheated upon and get very low prices for the diamonds that they mine. There's also a big challenge with overlapping licenses between artisanal mining and industrial mining that is not very well managed. So these were a bit the issues that came up. I will hopefully be able to present them in a more comprehensive way in a month from now.
Thank you, Hans. Now, for a couple from Wuzu Conte, I'll start with one either to be answered by Hans or Shamiso. Though the Central African Republic was placed under embargo in 2013, there is evidence that the non-KP neighboring countries serve as safe havens for the smuggling of conflict diamonds. To what extent does the work of the Civil Society Coalition keep track of this event, particularly with the current travel restrictions due to COVID-19? Do you want to take that, Hans, or?
Maybe Shamiso, are you still there?
Yeah.
Because
Shamiso,
I've already spoken so much. Yeah,
I'm here. Thank you. So we have a member in Cameroon, Relufa. They are keeping tabs on the situation in on the other side of the border with Central African Republic. So they track and assess the situation in Cameroon and in Central African Republic as well. We have a member of our coalition there that is also doing monitoring and reporting on the situation. For example, we've shared with the monitoring team, the Central Africa Republic monitoring team established by the KP, reports from Central Africa Republic. But I would like to indicate that the situation is quite delicate in that country because it's fragile. There's conflict in some of the areas, so it's not easy for anyone to travel, and even for the KP itself, it's a struggle getting information. Apart from reports maybe from the UN group of experts and other local contacts on the ground, it's not easy to travel within Central African Republic to get concrete information on the situation there. Even within the KP itself, there's a proposal for a review visit, but COVID is not making it possible, and also the fact that there's ongoing conflict in that country, so that all those factors makes it very difficult, even for civil society groups as well on the ground to gather information. But our hope is with the easing of COVID, maybe sometime there might be more scope for additional information gathering in Central African Republic, especially on the border the border with Cameroon and the other countries. But the situation is fragile, as everyone would know, in terms of COVID and also in terms of the conflict down there. So it makes it very difficult for anyone to gather information. And yeah, so that's what I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Shamiso. We have a follow-up question relating to sort of relating. In the recent intersessional meeting, the Civil Society Coalition continued calling on countries to expand the definition of conflict diamond. But why are member countries reluctant to expand on the definition of conflict diamond? Is this something that you can answer or offer some response to?
Yeah, there are several reasons depending on who you are talking to. Maybe depending on the country or delegation that you are talking to. Some would view it as a geopolitical issue where some countries would think that if they expand the conflict diamond definition, then their diamonds may be shut out of the market. And because of ongoing cases of maybe human rights violations that may be happening in those countries, or environmental damage that may be happening in particular countries or at particular mines. That also even includes the issue of poor labor standards in some of the cutting and polishing centers. So if you have a situation where a cutting and polishing center or a trading country has poor labor standards within its industry, then they may then refuse to expand definition if it includes, for example, issues to do with looking at labor conditions or the environment and human rights in or broadly violations of human rights. So many other countries as well believe that the KP was never intended to look at the issue of human rights or violence, which I think is not true. But then also the other element is that some would say the KP only focuses on situations that involve rebel movements that try to unseat a legitimate government and stuff like that. So it doesn't cover the actions or inactions of non-state actors like the police, the military, or even private security. So as a result, these issues that you are talking about are outside the remit of the Kimberley process. So I think what those kind of countries or participants will be advancing is a situation where they don't want to go beyond rebel movements, but would rather focus on um, uh, uh, maybe justifying some illegal actions or even human rights violations by state actors and non-state actors in the sector. So I think, like I indicated, there are various reasons that are given by different participants. Some would say you are targeting certain countries, for example, like Zimbabwe and others, Tanzania, Lesotho, Sierra Leone, and other countries that are part of the KP for shutting out their diamonds. So, but that's not the point. The point we are advancing the issue of human rights is basically to protect people. That government and the diamond industry should take measures to protect people, should ensure that diamonds are mined in situations where there isn't violence, where it doesn't result in displacement of communities without compensation or without free, prior, informed consent. And it's not about penalizing countries that we are saying this. No, it's about improving their systems. If a country is found wanting or is found to be in a situation where diamonds are being mined in situations with human rights violations, maybe the important thing is to investigate that and then find ways and measures to address those systems. That's what we are calling all the governments to do. We are not saying those diamonds should then be removed from the market. It's like a due diligence system. It's like assessing the risk that is associated with your diamonds, and then take measures to address those kind of risks. That's the approach that we have been proposing. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Shamiso. So I will this seems a opportune point to bring in Christina's question, whether Shamiso or Hans can comment on the World Diamond Council's expanded system of warranties as it is now opening up claims about human rights. Whether because Christina addresses she's concerned about greenwashing, but if there's any, and whether you do have any comments on it.
Yeah, I can share a few things about it. We were involved or not involved, we're consulted in the process of developing these new SOW guidelines of the World Diamond Council. We submitted an opinion jointly with a number of international NGOs, quite critical of the process, of it not going far enough, indeed not taking human rights seriously enough, considering it in a too voluntary manner. That was not fully taken into account, let's say. Just on the whole, I think the new guidelines, the new system of warranties are a step forward. They comprehensively look at responsible sourcing principles. It's good to raise awareness in the sector. It's good to start raising standards. I think the two main shortcomings, and they are quite important, is that on the one hand, it's a system that relies still very much on trust more than on proof. So it's companies claiming that they are not trading in diamonds affected by conflicts, human rights abuses, etc. But there's no verification of those claims. And secondly, it also lacks teeth in the sense that some of the problematic cases that we have talked about, if they occur, if there's a problem in Williamson Diamond Mine in Tanzania, in the Katoka mine in Angola, that those diamonds will not be stopped or stop being traded under the WDC system of warranty. So that of course remains a problem. And those, for us, these are big concerns. So yeah, in a nutshell, it's a step forward, but we still remain quite critical.
Thank you, Hans. I hope that goes some way to answering your question, Christina. I know that we are coming to the end of the webinar now, but before we do close off, I wanted to just ask Chair a very quick question relating to Diamonds for Peace and what she sees as the next steps for the organization. Chair.
Yes. We are planning various activities in addition to continue our existing activities. So we are planning to have more trainings coming, but yeah, but they're also subject to funding. So I can't tell so much details about it until we get funding. But yeah, we are planning to develop more trainings on mining, for smart mining, and to reforest their forests. Yeah, and also to build the traceable supply chain, because we identify the licensed dealers who are willing to export the diamonds mined by the cooperatives, but the cooperative is not ready yet because they want to run their own mining projects with their own funds. So that's going to take a little bit, but when they are ready, we are also ready. Yeah. So lastly, I would like to make some announcements because Diamonds for Peace have some opportunities for you to help us. because we are a very small NGO, and our funding comes from individual supporters and also corporate members and grants. So if you want to help us, you can support us from $5 a month or $30 per year. And if you are a resident in the United States, your donation is tax deductible. So you can access to this web page. And if your company is interested in becoming a corporate member, you can also access to this page, and the membership varies, and you can choose what you want. And we also have volunteer opportunities, like Beth is emceeing today, and she is also helping us proofread the documents. So if you are interested, you can access to this page and contact us. So thank you very much for joining us today.